Hi, I'm Matt Goldman. I'm the author of .NET MAUI in Action, and today I want to have a quick look at how we can build a material style entry text box for a .NET MAUI app. On my screen here, I'm looking at the material.io specification for the material design language. You can see here that this is for the text field type. Now we've got this field style here. You used to get this in Xamarin Forms using Visual Material. But I really like this outline style here. Now you see that the way it works is you've got a border for your text field and you've got a label in the middle. When I click into the label, you can see that it animates up to the top there and it changes color and the border changes color as well. And when I unfocus from this text field, it goes back into the middle. If I go in here and I start typing something, when I unfocus from it, the label stays up there. So I really like this and I want to see how we can achieve something similar in .NET MAUI. Let's get started. So I'm going to switch here to Visual Studio. Now I've got a Visual Studio project here that I've created. This is just using the template. I haven't done anything with this yet. So all that we've got here is Visual Studio .NET MAUI project out the box. So I'm just going to spin this up here on my Windows machine and we'll take a look at what it looks like. You can see here that in the template we've got a few visual elements on screen here. We've got an image, some labels and a button. We've got, through the beauty of hot reload, I can drop an entry onto the page here. So I'm just going to do it between the label and the button. So if I go entry and let's give it a placeholder, and I'm just going to put hello and horizontal options equals center, just so that it's the same as all the others. Oops, that's not right. Center. We can see here through the XAML live preview that it's updated. I'm going to switch back to the app. So you can see that it looks a bit different to the effect that we want to achieve here running on Windows. So it's got a kind of border and it's got a thicker border at the bottom. It has got that placeholder there. When I click on it, it doesn't animate up. And we can see that when I focus into the text field here, that line at the bottom thickens up a bit and I can go hello. Okay, great. That's kind of what you get out of the box. That's the standard entry. I want to add my own, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new control just to take away the border and background and all the things you get out of the box with .NET MAUI using those platform handlers. So I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to create my own. I'm just going to subclass the entry class. So I'm going to create a folder here in my solution called controls, and I'm going to create a control in there called borderless entry. I'm going to go to add, new folder, controls, and in here I'm going to just add a new class. And I am going to call it borderless entry. Borderless entry. So a couple of things I can do. First thing I'm going to do is convert that to a file scope namespace, get rid of the usings I'm not using, change this to public. And as I said, I want to subclass the entry type, which is that one there. So, all right. That is a good start. So where I'm going to change this entry to make it borderless and get rid of the background and all of that, I'm going to use a handler. So where I'm going to put my handler is going to be in my MAUI program, because then I can call it when the app starts up and it's just going to apply that everywhere. So let's open up MAUI program. I am going to call Microsoft.maui.handlers, and in here I want the entry handler. And I am going to call the mapper on here. And now I'm going to append to mapping. You can do append to mapping, prepend to mapping, and modify mapping. Of course, for modifying, you need to have a mapping to modify. I'm just going to do append to mapping. I'm going to give it a name here, and I'm going to call it borderless. Okay, and then I'm going to handler view. I'm going to pass this into a Lambda function so that I can start modifying these here. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is I don't want to apply this to every entry. I just want to apply it to my borderless entry. So the first thing I'm going to do is check that that's what we're doing. If view is borderless entry, we can see that it's automatically brought in that namespace for me there. Now there's a few things that I need to do differently depending on what platform. So let's start with Android, because that's the easiest one. And I'm going to use a compiler directive so that we can check which platform we're going to apply these mappings to. So if Android, and then we're going to do elif So iOS and Mac Catalyst are actually going to be the same. So we can I can do or if Mac Catalyst. Lastly, we're going to do Windows. So elif Windows, and then that's going to be the end of our if. So in each of these different blocks here, I'm going to do the different handler mapping depending on which platform. So let's start with Android. So handler.platform view. That's going to give us access to the Android views. Background equals null. And handler.platform view. I'm going to call the set background color method, and I'm going to set it to Android graphics color transparent. That is all we need for Android. Let's go ahead and do iOS and Mac Catalyst now. It's going to be slightly different, very, very similar. Handler, platform view, background color. And I'm going to set this to a color from UIKit, which is the Apple library we're using. UI color dot clear. We don't have transparent on iOS in UIKit. Next up, we're going to set the border width to nothing. So we didn't actually see this running on macOS. We'll see what the difference is, but there's a border all the way around. So, oops, let's do this a bit more. Platform view. Now this is going to be in layer dot border width equals 0. We set the border color as well. It doesn't matter if we set the width to 0. And now we're going to set the border style as well. Kind of a bit of a belt and braces here. Platform dot border style equals, and again we're going to call a border style from UIKit here. UIKit dot UI text border style dot none. I'll quickly point out that I'm using the fully namespace references here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've kind of already got these compiler directives here in this method. I don't want to have to put them up here as well in my using statements as well. So I'm just calling the fully namespaced, the namespace references there. Okay, let's see what we need to do for Windows. Now, Windows is going to be a little bit different. I am going to add this in here, but I'm going to show you something else in a moment as well. Handler.platform view border thickness equals new, and I need to give it a Microsoft UI XAML thickness, and I'm gonna. This is actually a method, so I need to pass it in a value there of 0. Okay, now that is most of what we need to do here. So let's just run it and see what happens. There's going to be one more thing we need to do on Windows, which I'll come back and do in a moment. But let's just see what we get so far. And I don't think we're going to see any change here. Before we make the change on Windows, I'm actually going to run this on Android as well, and we'll see how it looks on Android. So here we go. Here is our, you know what? I also need to actually add, so there's the standard entry. Let's add the borderless entry to our main page here as well. So I'm going to add it above this one. In fact, actually, the first thing I need to do is bring in the namespace for the controls. So XML and S, call it controls. And I'm going to refer to my controls folder in my app, in my namespace here, which should be under M. Here we go. That's my controls namespace for the file. So I'll add it here, controls, borderless entry. There we go. There it is. So nothing's happened here on Windows. You can see that we haven't got any things set here. So in fact, you know what? I can give it, it's subclass from entry. So I can give it the same placeholder, hello borderless. So just so we can see it a bit easily. So I can tab out of it. Now we can see that when I tab out of it, it's borderless. So that's working. But it's still, when I tab into it, it's got the border and the lower border. So we need to fix that up. Let's just have a quick look on Android. I'm going to switch to the Android platform here. And I've got a physical device, but I'm going to use my Android emulator. That's going to be a bit easier for us to see here. So we can see that the XAML Live Previewer has started up there, so I should be able to switch to my Android emulator and see the same thing. So we can see that that's actually applied to all of our entries there, not just the borderless entry. We might look at fixing that later, but we can see that here's our hello borderless. And we can see that on Android, this works exactly as we want. It doesn't matter whether we're focused on it or not. The border is just gone. Okay, so let's fix this up on Windows. So what I actually need to do to this is to go into the platforms folder and then Windows. And then I'm going to open up this app.xaml file here. And I'm just going to add some styles here. So first thing I'm going to do is add a resource dictionary. And this is going to be in my Maui Win UI application resources. So we're going to get some squigglies here. The compiler doesn't quite like this for some reason, but it's going to be okay. It's going to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a thickness and give it a key. And the key is going to be text control border theme thickness. And I'm going to give this a value of 0. We're going to add another one, which is going to be thickness. And the key for this is going to do the same thing, but for when it's focused, right? So key is going to be text control border theme thickness focused. Text control border theme thickness focused. This is also going to be 0. So that should be all we need to do now to get this fixed up on Windows. I'm going to switch back to Windows now. We'll keep working on Windows until this is done. And then we can have a look at it running on the different platforms. So I'm going to go and run this again now. And we should see that we've got the borderless entry like we had before. But now when we focus into it, we don't get the border and the underline at the bottom as well. Like I said, we've got some blue squigglies here. We don't really need to worry about that right now. That's an issue with the tooling, not an issue with Maui. So, okay, so there's our standard one. We can actually see straight away that when we tap into it, that border and that underline has gone. So this is now working. This is giving us what we want. We've got a borderless entry and we're good to start building on this now and start adding the other effects from the material entry that we want. So I'm going to go and close this right now. And let's move on and start fleshing this out a little bit more. So I'm going to make a few changes here. Now, right now, we have added this borderless entry to our main page. We don't actually want this borderless entry. What we want is a material entry. Now, I've just used the borderless entry here so that I can put it within the material entry control that we're going to build because, you know, we need a borderless entry so that we don't get the standard platform outlines interfering with the border that we're going to add. So back in my controls folder here, I'm going to add a new Maui content view. I'm going to use XAML. So I can go to .NET MAUI down here and I can go to content view XAML and I'm going to call this material entry. And this will scaffold this up for us. In this material entry, we're going to have a few things. We're going to have our border, we're going to have our label, and we're going to have our borderless entry. So I want these all positioned nicely, so I'm going to put them in a grid. So I'm going to get rid of the content that's here, and I'm going to add a grid. Now, I don't need to specify any rows or columns for this grid because I only really want one column and one row. I'm only putting these in a grid because that's going to let me lay them out and position them one on top of the other, and that's going to be the easiest way to do this. So we've got a borderless entry, even though we want a border, but we want our own border, not the platform supplied border. So the first thing I'm going to do here is add a border. Now the border is going to have a background color of transparent because, you know, we don't actually want any background on here. I'm going to give it a stroke. Now the stroke is the stroke is of type brush. You can give it just a color and it will create the brush for you. You can create a brush. Now I'm going to give it a color here, and the color I'm going to give it is the static resource, and I'm going to give it primary. So we've already got the primary color defined here. I'm just going to give it that. I'm going to use that for now. The stroke shape is of type shape. Now I'm going to use a round rectangle here. So you can actually define the shape here as you want, but I'm going to use one of the predefined ones, round rectangle, and I'm going to give it a corner radius of 5. I could specify all the corners here. If I just put one number, that's going to apply to all of them. Let's go ahead and center it. So vertical options center and horizontal options center. So I'm going to do this because all of the different controls within this grid are all going to be centered, so they all sit on top of each other, because that's kind of what I want. Okay, now I know that this is going to not have the right effect that I want on Android, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of padding that I only really want to apply to Android. Now I could do this with a markup extension, but I'm going to do it explicitly here for now. I don't want on idiom, I want on platform. And the type argument is going to be thickness, because of course it's you can specify it on each individual side. So on platform, platform equals Android, and the value is going to be, I want it to be 10 on each side, nothing at the top and the bottom. So left, top, right, bottom. Within this border, we want our borderless entry, because as I said, we're creating this border, which is our own border, and this is what we want. I'm going to go ahead and add this. Do you know what? I also need to bring in the namespace again. In fact, something that I should have checked here. We can see that this isn't right, this namespace. So I'm going to go and fix that up. Maui material entry dot controls, and we can see that we've got a red squiggly here because this now doesn't have the same path as the partial class defined in the XAML. So I'm just going to go and fix that up here. Maui material entry controls. Okay, that should all be happy now. So even though this isn't the same namespace, I can't reference my borderless entry here. I need to explicitly define that namespace in the XAML. So I'm going to go and do this now. XMLNS controls equals, and we can see that IntelliSense has given me it there. So now I can do this. Now I could start typing controls. I could do borderless entry. It's going to automatically do it for me. As I said, we want everything centered. So let's go and center this. And everything is going to sit one on top of the other there. I'm going to give it a name because I'm going to want to do stuff with this. So we'll get back to that. I'm going to call it ME entry. Let's leave that for now. And outside of the border, I'm going to add a label. And the label, let's give it some text. Enter some text. And we want to center this as well within the grid. Everything's going to be centered. I'm going to give this a name as well, and I'm going to call it ME label. And that's again because we're going to come and do some stuff with these shortly. Okay, so now we've got the beginnings of our material entry control. It's going to have a border, a label, and a borderless entry. I can go back to my main page here, get rid of this borderless entry because we're not actually going to use this at all anymore. It's just there to flesh out our material entry. So I can go material entry. Now we know that material entry doesn't have a placeholder path because we've got that label there that we've explicitly defined. So let's go ahead and run this now and see what it looks like. So this is our Windows app. We can see that there's some stuff here that's not quite right. So the first thing is that our border doesn't fit around the text, and there's our label though, but other than that, it seems to be working. So why don't we go ahead and give this border a width? In fact, let's add that width to the borderless entry control because that's within the border. That's actually going to expand the border as well. So if I do that, we should see some nice hot reload. There we go, perfect. So that is now working. So we've got our label, our border, and our text, our borderless text entry. The problem that we have now is that we can still see the label. So I can type and the label's still there. Let's fix that up next. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a couple of event handlers to my borderless entry. I'm going to add one for focused and one for unfocused. So let's add these now. So focused, and I'm going to let it give me the default name here because that's actually exactly what I want, and unfocused. New event handler. Okay, so super simple for now, right? All I'm going to do is I'm going to make the label visible and invisible depending on whether it is focused or not. The first thing that we want to do is when we're focused on the text field, we 100% know that we want that label to be invisible. So let's go in here and go label.isVisible equals false. So that's going to hide the label when we click into that text field. That's a good start, right? But when we unfocus from it, we want to show it, but only if we haven't typed something. So if we were to go back to our material field here, we can see that we're not doing this animation yet. We're just showing and hiding this label for now. But we can see that when you unfocus, it comes back. But if you've typed something, it stays where it is. We're going to do something similar here. So the first thing that I want to do is check to see whether there's any text in the entry. So if we'll go if me entry dot text. In fact, actually, what we want to do is check to see if there's anything there. So let's do string dot is, I'm going to go is null or white space, me entry dot text. Then we're going to go me label dot is visible equals true. So what's going to happen now is, let me just fire it up and explain what's happening here. So just to repeat, when we focus on that borderless entry, the label should disappear. When we unfocus from it, the label should appear, but only if we don't have any text in there. This is going to start up now on Windows, and we can see we've got the same thing. We've got our border, we've got our label. If I click into this, bang, the label's gone. Perfect. If I tab out to unfocus, the label comes back. Excellent. So I'm just going to type something here, and when I tab out, the label doesn't come back. That's a really good start. This has taken us a long way towards our towards our material entry. In fact, you know, it's not far off, right? We're basically almost there. That's a nice cool entry effect. Next up though, what we really want is for that label to animate rather than just appear and disappear. So I'm going to add a couple of methods here to my code behind to take care of that animation for me. I'm going to add one called scale label down. And I'm going to add one called scale label up. Now these are going to be a little bit confusing because the problem is the label kind of scales down but moves up, and it scales up but moves down. But I'm just going to use the scaling to define what's happening, not the actual position as well. So private void scale label down. And let's add the scale label up one as well. Private void scale label up. Wow, how good is this in telecode? It's working really well. What I want to do is I want to change the position of the label, and I want to change the size as well. So let's start by doing the scale. So I'm going to go me label dot scale, and I'm going to make it a bit smaller. So I want it to be 0.8. I am going to let this take 250 milliseconds, and I'm going to use a linear easing. This method is actually called scale to, not scale. So let me fix that up. So that's going to do scale, but I also want it to move as well. And for that, I'm going to use the translate to method. So me label dot translate to. Now, this is going to use relative positioning. So I want it to go, it's going to use X, Y, and then we're going to use the timing and the easing. So I'm going to go minus 50. I'm going to move it to the left a little bit. Minus 20. Again, 250 milliseconds. I want these to happen at the same time, and I want the same easing here as well. Cool. All right, now let's get rid of this and replace it with the scale label down method. Let's flesh out the scale label up method now as well. So for here, basically, I'm just going to undo what I did before. In fact, I can even just copy paste this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this to 1 because I want it to scale back to full size. As I said, these are all relative. So I want this to be 0. I want it to be 0 here, just back in its original position. Let's run this now and see what we get. Okay, so we've got exactly what we had before. We've got the nice little border here. We've got the text placeholder label. Now, when we clicked into it before, that disappeared, and then when we unfocused it, it became visible. Now what we want to see is for it to move and scale. So I'm just going to click into here. Almost perfect. That's actually almost perfect. So it scales up, it moves to the left, but we've got two problems. The position's not quite right, and it's got a transparent background. So we need to give that a background. So when I unfocus, it's not going back. So let's have another look at the code here and see why that's not working. Because of course, what I haven't done is change this to the method that we want. So now, hopefully we should get some nice hot reload there. Let's see what happens. I may have to restart. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we can see that when I focus into this, it scales down, it moves up. The position's off a little bit. We'll fix that in a moment. And the background is transparent, so we'll fix that as well. And when I tab out, it goes back. And when I type some text, okay, perfect. That is now almost perfect. So let's go and fix up a few different things.